I want you to just close your eyes for a second. Imagine you're walking into this massive auditorium.
Okay.
It's packed, shoulder to shoulder. The air it's not just warm, it's thick, humid with sweat and breath. And the noise, it's physical.
Right.
The music isn't just playing, it's driving.
Yeah.
A fast, relentless tempo that kind of syncs up with your pulse.
Sounds like a rock concert or a riot.
Exactly, but it's a church service.
A church service.
Yeah. On stage, there's a leader with a microphone.
Right.
But he's not, reading a sermon. He's making these sound effects.
Sound effects.
Whooshing noises into the mic, mimicking a rushing wind. And the crowd is just absolutely losing it. People are shouting, "Lord, Lord, Lord," until their voices crack.
Wow.
Over in the corner, someone hits the floor, convulsing. Someone else just faints dead away. To the people inside, this is it. This is the peak of spiritual contact. This is the Holy Spirit arriving in power.
It's a very visceral, very intense scene. And for millions of people, that intensity is the proof of their faith. The logic is, if I feel it this strongly, it must be real.
Right. But here is the twist, and it is a massive one. The document we are diving into today looks at that exact scene. The shouting, the fainting, the ecstasy. And it doesn't call it revival.
Okay.
It doesn't even call it Christian. It calls it a medical condition, specifically hysteria syndrome.
That is quite a pivot.
It is, and that's just the opening paragraph. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are unpacking a fascinating and honestly a pretty confrontational piece of writing.
Mm-hmm.
It is the preface to a book titled How Can We Receive the Holy Spirit as a Gift?, published by a group called The Beautiful Gospel.
And I think we need to set the stage here immediately. Our mission today isn't to preach to you. We aren't here to say who is going to heaven and who isn't.
No.
We are here to analyze a specific argument. And this argument is fascinating because it's so incredibly stark. It challenges the way a huge portion of modern believers understand their own experiences.
Oh, absolutely. The author is essentially saying, everything you think you know about feeling the Spirit, it's not just wrong, it's a delusion.
Right. The core tension we're looking at today is between emotion and knowledge. The author argues that modern Christianity has traded correct knowledge for an adrenaline rush.
So if you are interested in how belief systems work or, how different groups define truth versus madness, this is going to be a wild ride.
Definitely.
So let's go back to that hysteria diagnosis. I was honestly struck by how cinematic the author's description is. I mean, they do not hold back.
No, it's a very specific, very sharp critique.
Mm-hmm.
The text explicitly describes the leader on stage making those wind-like sound effects to whip the crowd into a frenzy.
Yeah.
But notice the language the author uses. They call it charismania. They call it fanaticism. And most interestingly, they call it shamanistic faith.
Shamanistic. That feels like a very deliberate choice of words. That's not a word you usually hear Christians throwing at other Christians.
No, it is not. And that's the point. By labeling it shamanistic, the text is effectively stripping these events of their Christian identity.
Oh.
The author is categorizing them as pagan rituals. The argument is that this isn't the Holy Spirit descending, it's a psychological break. The text argues people are falling into hysteria syndrome because they're exhausted, excited, and terrified. They are working themselves into a trance.
So if I'm in that meeting and I fall down, the author is saying that's not God touching me, that's just my brain overloading.
Essentially, yes. But it gets darker. The author doesn't just say it's psychological or biological.
What else is there?
They explicitly call it the work of Satan.
Wow. Okay. That is extreme.
It highlights the binary worldview of this text. I mean, there is no gray area. The author says this behavior is reckless and vulgar.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that these believers are being misled by false prophets who have become spiritual pillars. They've replaced the boring, static written word with a theatrical performance.
But here is what I'm struggling with. Why? Why would people fake this? Or why would they work themselves into this frenzy? If the author's right and it's just hysteria, what's driving it?
That is the million-dollar question. And the author actually provides a very specific answer.
They do?
Yeah. They argue that this hysteria is a compensation mechanism.
Compensation for what?
For the fact that they are still sinners.
Okay, let's unpack that. Because I feel like if you stopped the average person on the street, or even the average churchgoer, they'd say, well, yeah, nobody's perfect. We're all sinners.
Right. We try to be good. We mess up. We ask for forgiveness.
That's the standard operating procedure, right?
In most churches, yes.
Yeah.
But that is exactly where this author stops you. The text takes an incredibly hardline position here.
How so?
The logic is, the Holy Spirit is holy, completely pure. If you have sin in your heart, even a speck of it, The Holy Spirit literally cannot reside in you.
So wait, if I say, I believe in Jesus, but I'm a sinner saved by grace, this author says.
What? The author asks, if you claim that the Holy Spirit has come into your heart, even though there is sin in your heart, can you truly believe that it is the Holy Spirit?
So they are saying it's physically impossible.
Exactly. Like oil and water.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, think of it like a dirty vessel theory. If a cup is filled with dirty water sin, you cannot pour clean water, the Spirit, into it. The author argues that the majority of Christians are deluding themselves.
Oh.
They believe they have the Spirit because of those experiences, the shouting, the tears, but because they haven't solved the sin problem radically enough, they're actually empty.
So the shouting,
Yeah.
the noise, that's all just trying to cover up the emptiness.
That is the author's argument. They're trying to force a connection because the structural connection isn't there. They haven't had their sins remissioned in the way the author claims is necessary.
You keep mentioning this way. The text talks about correct knowledge constantly. It feels very, I don't know, almost academic, like you have to pass a test to get the Spirit.
It is distinct, isn't it? The author actually draws a comparison to science. They mention that worldly science and technology have advanced rapidly.
Yeah.
We have smartphones, space travel, AI, but they argue that spiritual knowledge has lagged behind. It's stuck in the Dark Ages.
That's an interesting frame. Like we are technologically advanced but spiritually illiterate.
Precisely.
Mm.
There is a plea here for precision. The author believes faith isn't a vague feeling, it's a mechanism. It's almost like a chemical equation. If you have the right ingredients mixed in the right way, the Holy Spirit happens. If you don't, no amount of crying or begging or shouting, Lord, will make a difference.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics. If the hysteria is the symptom of the sin problem, what is the cure? What is this correct knowledge that fixes the vessel?
The text proposes a specific solution. They call it the beautiful gospel.
Which sounds nice, but what does it actually mean?
They define it as the gospel of the water and the Spirit.
And this is where we get my absolute favorite analogy from the text. The author says this gospel has the power of dynamite.
It is a potent image, isn't it? Especially when you contrast it with the wind and noise of the revival.
Just as a building is blown away when dynamite explodes. I love that visual. It's not a gentle sweeping, it's an obliteration. The author says this gospel blows away sin once and for all.
And that once and for all is the key phrase. But we need to slow down here and really look at the ingredients of this dynamite, because this is where the theology gets very technical.
Right.
And frankly, where it diverges from what most people know.
Okay, lay it out. What are the ingredients?
The text says water and Spirit refers to two specific historical events. One, the baptism Jesus received from John, that's the water.
Okay.
And two, the blood of the cross, that's the Spirit.
Okay, I feel like most people know the cross part. That's standard Christianity 101. Jesus died for sins.
Sure.
But water, Jesus' baptism,
Yeah.
that seems to be the linchpin for this author. Why is the baptism so important to them?
This is the crucial differentiator. The author insists that modern Christianity has largely forgotten or misunderstood the water part.
Really?
Yeah, the text states that the true and beautiful gospel is found in both the baptism and the blood.
But why? What does the baptism do in their system?
The text implies that the baptism is the moment of the transfer. It's the cleansing agent. While the preface doesn't give us the full theological dissertation, the logic presented is that without the water, without the baptism of Jesus, the sin isn't actually taken away from the sinner.
So going back to our dirty vessel analogy.
Right. The water, the baptism, is what scours the cup clean. It transfers the sin away. The blood, the cross, pays the penalty for that sin. But the author argues that most Christians only focus on the cross.
So they are trying to pay for sins that are still stuck to them.
That's one way to look at it. The author argues they have a half gospel. They have the judgment, the cross, but they miss the transfer, the baptism. So they're left with fanatical faith, trying to believe their sins are gone, but lacking the correct knowledge of how they were taken away.
That helps explain the hysteria claim a bit more. If you subconsciously feel like your sin is still there, you'd probably be pretty anxious. You'd be
Screaming for relief, exactly. You are trying to bypass the cleansing phase and jump straight to the indwelling phase. And according to this text, that is mechanically impossible.
Mechanically impossible.
Yeah, it's like trying to move furniture into a house that's currently on fire. Put the fire out, clean the sin before you can move in.
That's a really good analogy. And the author insists this isn't about effort. It's not about how loud you pray. It is about knowing.
Yes. The text says, you must first be equipped with the faith of the correct knowledge. It is an intellectual assent that triggers a spiritual reality.
This reminds me of the author's own story. There's a brief mention in there that they used to suffer under legalism.
It's a very human moment and a very intellectual text. They describe being bound under legalism, even while believing in Jesus.
Right.
It paints a picture of someone who is trying very hard to be good, following all the rules, checking all the boxes, but felt no internal peace. They were anxious.
Until they found this correct knowledge.
Exactly. The shift happened then.
And the result isn't the frenzy of the revival meeting. The text describes the outcome as a life of peace.
It's a total transformation of state. It promises a transition from confusion to clarity, from begging God for the Spirit to serving the Lord with the Spirit already inside. The author says that if you have this knowledge, you will come to enjoy a life of peace through the living water.
It's a very calm, assured state of being.
It is.
It sounds so clinical, though. Correct knowledge, mechanism, equation. It just takes the emotion out of it completely.
But for the author, that is the point. Emotion is volatile. Emotion fluctuates. Knowledge, as they define it, is objective. It's stable.
I want to zoom out a bit. Because the author claims that this confusion, this hysteria, this misunderstanding is actually a relatively new thing. They mention the 19th century specifically.
This is their historical argument, and it is a massive claim. The text argues that the misguided Holy Spirit movement began in the early 19th century. They argue that this movement swept the globe and left behind a Christianity filled with faults and the work of evil spirits.
Well, that is huge. They're basically saying, well, they're arguing that the last 200 years of charismatic Christianity have been a giant mistake.
It is a sweeping rejection of a massive chunk of recent church history.
Yeah.
The author's goal is to bypass those 2 centuries completely.
Oh.
They want to shed light on the history of the early church. They view the 19th century movement as the introduction of superstitious faith, that idea of prioritizing experience over the written word.
It really is a binary worldview. As I was reading this, I kept looking for a middle ground. You know, maybe the author thinks these people are just a little misguided, but still well-intentioned. But no.
No, the text leaves absolutely no room for that. It is either the work of the Holy Spirit through the specific gospel of water and spirit, or it is the work of evil spirits. The author explicitly says, there can be no indwelling of the Holy Spirit without the beautiful gospel word. It's an exclusive claim.
And confident. I mean, the author says, yes, I can speak confidently. They basically guarantee it. They say, if you acknowledge and accept the truth I preach, the indwelling of the Holy Spirit will surely be in your heart.
That certainty is the selling point. Think about the target audience. In a world and a religious landscape that is often filled with doubt.
Am I doing enough? Does God hear me?
Right, why don't I feel anything? This text offers a guarantee.
It's a contract.
Exactly, it says, stop striving, stop screaming, stop worrying about your feelings. Just accept this specific formula, water plus spirit, and the result is automatic. It's like a mathematical equation for salvation.
It brings me back to that dynamite analogy again. Dynamite doesn't care how you feel about it. If you light the fuse, it explodes. The author seems to be saying the gospel is objective like that.
Precisely, and that is the fundamental clash this text illuminates. On one side, you have the charismania the author describes, subjective, emotional, bodily, experiential.
Right.
On the other side, you have this beautiful gospel, objective, intellectual, doctrinal, absolute.
So for you listening, whether you're religious or not, this is a really interesting case study in how people define proof.
Yes. For the people in the hysteria meetings, the proof is the feeling. I fell down, so it's real.
No.
For this author, the proof is the logic. The text says X, I believe X, therefore Y is true. The author is arguing that your feelings are liars.
The majority of people are afflicted with a disease. That's how they dismiss the feelings.
It is a powerful rhetorical strategy. By medicalizing the opposition, calling it hysterical syndrome, you delegitimize their experience completely. You aren't arguing against their theology. You are diagnosing their pathology.
You aren't debating them, you are treating them.
Exactly.
It's intense, and it brings us back to that core question of what is the Holy Spirit? Is it a force that takes over your body, shakes you, and makes you shout? Or is it a quiet resident that comes in through understanding?
The author is firmly in the second camp. They talk about the life of a disciple led by the Holy Spirit. It implies order, direction, and sanity, not chaos.
I want to touch on one last thing before we wrap up, the water. We talked about it being Jesus' baptism, and we talked about it being the cleansing,
Mm.
but I want to press on why this specific text thinks everyone else missed it. Is it just a theological oversight?
The author implies it's deeper than that.
Mm-hmm.
They suggest that the water is the uncomfortable part of the gospel because it requires a specific understanding of Jesus' role that maybe isn't as flashy as the cross or the resurrection. The cross is dramatic. The empty tomb is miraculous. But the baptism, it's quiet, it's theological. It requires you to understand the Old Testament sacrificial system, the laying on of hands, the transfer of sin, and apply it to Jesus in the River Jordan.
So it requires homework.
It does. It requires knowledge, just like the author says. And the critique here is that modern believers want the experience without doing the homework. They want the fire without the water.
And because they skip the water, they never get clean, so they never get the true spirit. They just get noise.
That is the author's verdict. Dynamite or delusion. If you have the water and the spirit, you get the dynamite that blows away sin. If you don't, you just get the delusion of your own emotions.
So let's recap. We started in a noisy, sweaty auditorium, what the author calls a scene of hysteria syndrome.
Right.
We learned that the author believes this is caused by a fundamental misunderstanding, thinking the Holy Spirit can dwell in a sinner.
Right. A logical impossibility in their view.
And the solution proposed is the beautiful gospel of the water and the Spirit, a return to the correct knowledge of Jesus' baptism and blood.
Which acts like dynamite. It blows away sin, creating a clean vessel. No screaming required, just knowledge.
It's a compelling argument for its simplicity, even if it is incredibly exclusive. It takes the burden off the individual to perform spirituality and places it on the acceptance of a truth.
It does. It shifts the locus of control from the body to the mind, from the subjective experience to the objective fact.
This has been a really intriguing look into a very specific worldview. It's a reminder that even within one tradition like Christianity, there are these massive chasms in understanding what truth actually looks like.
Absolutely. It shows that the definition of a single word-like gospel can radically change how a person lives, how they worship, and even how they view their own sanity.
So here's the thought I want to leave you with today. We live in a world that puts a huge premium on lived experience. We are often told that what we feel is valid, that our truth is what we experience.
Follow your heart, right? That's the mantra of our age.
Exactly. But this author argues the exact opposite, that feeling something deeply doesn't make it real. In fact, your feelings might be fanaticism or a delusion. It raises the question, when does correct knowledge override our senses?
It's the ultimate skeptic's question, applied to faith.
Does truth have to be felt to be real? Or is truth real regardless of whether you feel peace or dynamite or absolutely nothing at all? Something to chew on.
Indeed.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.